Hello, welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsor this week is Notion, and Apple Insider Plus this week. Well, we're going a different route. We're going into the Badlands when Apple is not the nice company that you would like to think it is. But enough of that later. Apple Insider Plus is for subscribers to the podcast. And if you are already a subscriber, we'll see you later for that. But if you're not, do please join us through Apple's own podcast subscriptions or through Patreon. Details in the show notes, but that will come later. Let's get on with the fact that joining me is Wes Hilliard. And Wes, just before we started speaking, had something on his mind, apparently about speakers. And well, that's it. I've got to know. Wes, hello, and speakers? Really?
Well, I just happened right before we got into the show, saw a YouTube video someone posted where they wanted to clean the speaker grill in a MacBook. And it turns out they discover, and this is something I didn't really realize, those speaker holes aren't actually holes. They're divots. They're sealed. They're completely filled in.
Oh.
They're painted with a little black dot to make them look like holes.
So Apple's lying to... This belongs in Apple is bad, isn't it? Why is Apple lying to me about my speakers that look so nice?
What's interesting is I don't think even Apple calls them holes, but it's it doesn't matter. It doesn't automatically mean your speakers are going to sound worse. Yes, a hole would allow air to travel more directly, but Apple accounts for the entire case when developing acoustics. For how the sound is going to travel and spatial audio. And I don't know about you, William, but any MacBook, especially recently, their speakers are pretty amazing. So I don't think it matters if it's a hole or not. I'm
just astonished that it doesn't matter and that they would go to the trouble of there's some poor soul at Apple who is painting each little tiny dot on the grill. I mean, that must take hours.
I think that's a robot. But this was
Bartek hobbies. Sorry.
Yeah, this was the YouTube channel Bartek TV. Just a fun little tidbit to start the show.
Do you know, in a weird way, this reminds me, I mean, is this really related? But it used to be, I think it only used to be, on certain Macs, there would be a little green light to tell you it was on. But when it wasn't on, you could not see where that light was supposed to be. Like, it shone through the chassis. And I think that was completely unnecessary and absolutely the coolest thing ever.
The other one that I know off the top of my head is on the iPhone. The grill on the bottom, even though it's symmetrical, only one side actually has a speaker and the other side is the microphone, and only uses one of those holes.
I knew that one. Yes. All right. Yes. So test me on speakers. I score 1. Okay. We've talked we've managed to work in iPhone, old Macs, MacBooks. We've covered everything. Let's go for something completely new because, hang on, what time have you got? Is it now definite that the Apple Smart Ring is coming or isn't? Because that seems to be changing every few minutes or so. Do you know these stories, and do you have an opinion over who in the world is right about the Smart Ring?
Well, the first thing is I think it's funny that the first conclusion was, so Mark Gurman came out with a report, not really even a report, it was in a Q&A section of a newsletter, so it's like the most discarded portion of possible where he mentioned this. So it doesn't even feel like it's that confident of a statement, but apparently Apple has completely abandoned the Smart Ring development. Maybe it's on pause. These kinds of things with these kinds of leaks, especially through Mark Gurman, you can never tell. He was absolutely right about Apple Car being disbanded. That kind of a big move is known, but Apple Ring is probably a couple of people internal to the company kind of playing around with sensors. So who knows? But there are a lot of patents. This isn't Apple Ring was never a guy behind a webcam on YouTube telling you the Apple Ring exists. This wasn't one of those kinds of rumors. There was always concrete evidence, just like there's concrete evidence of a foldable phone through the patent system that Apple is working on. So this was one of those things that felt inevitable, and maybe it's on pause. Maybe Apple's prioritizing other things. It could be done, but I think I'm going to go with this one being true because it was only a few hours later that an analyst appeared on CNBC and said, "Oh yeah, Apple Ring, it's due in 2026." He probably just hadn't read Mark Gurman's newsletter yet, because this person on CNBC has no, I don't believe, definitive knowledge or connections to Apple. So take them both with a grain of salt, whether or not it's coming. Personally, I think it's a redundancy. I mean, I know Apple has a lot of redundancies in its pipeline, but a ring does not feel necessary. It's cool, just not necessary.
Well, I just think analysts should phone each other in the morning. Really, that's what it is. What are we going to make up today? That's not fair. I sometimes think there are analysts, particularly the more successful and more popular ones, who occasionally think, oh, go on, let's just try something, see what happens, see if everybody takes it, and if it runs. And it's headlines everywhere. I mean, am I just being very unfair about diligent analysts who work very hard to help us out?
Let's we can have a conversation a little bit here, because it's a very long and varied known history. I mean, going all the way back to the beginnings of Wall Street. Stock, I wouldn't say manipulation, but you can nudge it very easily using the news cycle, and a lot of analysts work for firms that buy stocks, so the connections are clear. Rene Ritchie years ago had a whole video piece about this, and I think it still stands today, of just talking about how you can watch the Apple stock and how news goes and see it go up and down, and how a certain analyst piece seemed timed with certain changes in stock so they can buy up more stock. That sounds more malicious than it is. It's not real. It's not illegal. Our stock system is a lot of fun over here in the United States. There's a lot of things that are seemingly shady but completely legal. And yeah, I mean, fine. These guys release a report. They know that they have some weight in the industry, and it's enough weight to cause a shift in the stock, and you can either buy or sell on that news. And it happens all the time. I don't think Gurman specifically, I'm not accusing him of doing this. It's just a thing that happens a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised, especially, well, we'll get into it in a minute, how news is covered about certain events at Apple, like people retiring. Just by how you word a headline can change everything about a story.
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, I get why it's not illegal, because it's not insider trading unless you actually know something before it's announced. So if you're an analyst predicting something, then that's totally separate. But you would think this has a sort of limited effectiveness, because in order to make a significant stock change, presumably your story has to be quite significant by itself. And so it's right or wrong. And if you're wrong enough times and you seem to be profiting from it, surely people stop listening to you, or at least stop buying stocks on your say-so.
Well, the most sound advice I've ever heard about the stock market in the United States is watch Jim Cramer and do the opposite of whatever he tells you to do. That seems to make people a lot of money. But no, it's fine. It's one of those things where it's news literacy, right? And I don't think they teach this. You have to learn it on your own. But it's so important to understand news, how it's generated, what people write about, their motivations. It's not good enough just to search something on Google, have it pop up, click on it, and then read it. Know where that source is coming from. Who is the author? What are their motivations? Where do they get their money from? Is it a sponsored piece? Do they have stock in the company that they're writing about? For example, I know I don't have stock in Apple. Mike doesn't. I don't think really anyone Apple Insider does. It's just not. It's a conflict of interest, right? We don't want to appear as if we're trying to manipulate people into making decisions about Apple that would benefit our end, right? Whereas other companies, right? Bloomberg, being a big company, I don't know what they invest in, but there's a good chance that they have tech investments, and they have
they must.
and they have a very important role to play there. We know that The Verge is a huge company, but they tend to favor Google Pixel because for whatever reason their reader base heavily invests in Google Pixel. So a lot of their reviews show that, and that's odd. And I'm not trying to be accusatory. It's just sometimes you have to know what you're getting into or who you're reading when you're looking at a different website or different things. So as far as this news goes, again, I'm not really trying to accuse Gurman of anything. It's just take everything with a grain of salt. Know everything in the world has bias. I know I keep having this conversation recently, I don't know why, of people saying, well, I want completely unbiased, unaffiliated down the middle, neutral news resources. It just doesn't exist. Humans have an inert bias, and it will show through their writing, no matter how hard they try. Even if it is a skill to write without just completely, writing a story about Elon Musk and not insulting him, right? It's a skill, yes. But at the same time, if you absolutely hate the guy, it's still going to come through somewhere in the writing. It's very hard to avoid. You have, but is it necessary? I guess that's a whole different conversation. But I just keep seeing this pop up, and I'm just like, guys, humans are naturally biased. Stop looking for unbiased news and just look for accurate news. That's the difference.
It's not just the writers of news, though. I think we're all complicit in this because of our environment. Because when I was a teenager, I used to read, obviously, BBC News here in the UK, but I also read the New York Times. And it was absolutely riveting to see when they both covered the same story, particularly when it was the Times talking about a British story, because they had to work with what would the American readers already know, what would need to be explained, and they had a very different perspective that was not in any way what you would call unfairly biased. It was rooted in their environment and how different the audience is and what they needed, and I loved that. I just found that riveting. But just
some advice for Americans this election season: if you want to get completely away from American biases, go look up a news report about something happening in the United States, in the UK, or Australia. I'm telling you, they do amazing reporting over like at the BBC and stuff. And again, you're never going to get completely unbiased, but if you want the 1,000-yard view of something, get out of the country, get away from the biases that are so heavily present in your day-to-day life, right? It's always so funny to me that people are like, I come to this AppleInsider website and I'm expecting non-pro Apple things. It's not that we're going to automatically side with Apple. It's just a funny thought process to me, right? Yeah. I'm going to AppleInsider. This article had better not be pro Apple, and it's just like, where are you? It's like, it's always so funny to me. But I mean, I think when it's necessary, right? The way we write our pieces, and you can say this for yourself, William, but when I write my pieces at AppleInsider, it depends on what we're covering. Some things need to be more straightforward news. We're going to get the information out there, and that's what's most important. And you try to remove yourself from the piece as much as possible. You're speaking in the voice of AppleInsider. That's a very just specific skill of a journalist. And then there's other articles where more opinion or inserting yourself into it might be needed, like discussing certain things around certain people or companies that we may not like or we've heard from before, and it deserves a little bit more ire, a little bit more positioning to tell the readers exactly how we feel, because the story is nothing without our input. And writing that line and knowing when to do which, I think, is very important, and it's a skill you have to learn.
My only hesitation there is you did recommend people check out UK news sources, and you have to be so careful.
Just like in the United States, everywhere has their weird guys. Everyone has their Fox News. But
I mean, I suppose I would be betraying my own biases if I recommended UK news sources. I can tell you, don't go near The Sun, don't go near the Daily Mirror, the Daily Mail. Right. You can argue politically about some of the others. I mean, also, I am ex-BBC, so I am very pro-BBC News Online. I think they have certain problems, and the BBC's biggest problem is artificial balance. BBC will have a nutter on next to somebody who actually knows, and they'll get equal time. And I understand, but it's worrying. Yeah.
I can hear the alarm bells ringing, of course, because we're talking very adjacently, nearly, to political structures and things like that. And I just want to say again to the listeners, please reach out. You're always allowed to email us. Tell us if you disagree. I am so tired that we live in a world where people persecute you every time you mention something even close to a subject that's sensitive. It halts the conversation. You know what I mean? But not to get into that, I just wanted to mention, I know what we're talking about here, guys. We're not dumb. Please take a breath, count to 10, and understand that everyone in this world has biases, and this is a Apple News podcast, and Apple lives in the world, and we're in it too. So sorry that this stuff can bring up things that might make some people sore. But moving on.
Do you know, if I were cleverer right now, I'd be lambasting you in some way, disagreeing incredibly and stuff. But how about this? Let's step away from this, because you raised this point. You talked about headline changes, and then we went into the bias of it. But I know, actually, BBC gives another example. I've forgotten. There was BBC had a rule for a while of maximum 5-word headlines on News Online, and it was asinine because there was one story that I actually leapt on. I thought, this is awful. And then you realise if they'd had a 6th word, you would have thought, yeah, okay. I mean, it's BBC. They weren't doing that to clickbait. They were doing it to fit their own in-house rules. And I've obeyed enough in-house rules with them before. I get it. But in that case, they were just wrong in the story for it. But you're talking particularly about people leaving Apple. And I know about this. Vision Pro guy is going, but I don't know what your point is about headlines and things.
Well, I did want to mention it. You talk about headlines. I will always bring this up when we're talking about it. The Onion had an excellent joke for, I guess, when the newspaper, gosh, I want to say World War II, was it New York Times or something of the sort, just had war in large capital letters on the front page. Well, the Onion had WA dash title continued on page 12. It was just an excellent joke. But in any case, yes, titles.
Actually, sorry, you went off the track there. I've got to go on the track here. The Onion, I used to read it through RSS every day, and I adored it. And then they switched off their RSS feed. But just in the last couple of weeks, I'm using the new version of Reader, Reader spelled EE. Reader, and for some reason, and who knows how, it lets me get a feed of the Onion, so I am back reading it every day. So yay for Reader, yay for the Onion. But you were saying
the Onion is excellent. So we have a couple of Dans leaving Apple, and this isn't pick on Mark Gurman today. It's just the guy produces a lot of news, and this is what we're discussing right now. But I made the joke in our Slack of I don't know if people are familiar with the meme of Vince McMahon, the former owner of Wrestling United States, and there's this thing that goes around of him just making face reactions to different things happening. It's just this classic meme, and it's getting more and more ridiculous until he falls out of his chair, right? So if you're familiar with that meme, great. But anyway, that's what it feels like every time something lands on Mark Gurman's desk saying someone's leaving Apple. He's just so excited. It's just, man, another one. It's just such a, and every time he writes about it, it's the guy leaving this division because of a failure at Apple. The internal structure is changing, and Johnny Ive leaving ruins the society, and Steve Jobs dying, the soul of Apple is gone. Whatever. Just people retire. They have a life. They get paid more by going to a different company. They have a family to go out and spend all their millions that they've made. Dan Riccio has been at Apple since 1998, 26 years. He spent a lot of that time as the head of engineering, right? The same position as John Turnus right now. And he spearheaded things like AirPods, the iPad Pro. He was partially responsible for Apple Car coming and going. This guy had a career, and he stepped down in 2021 to a lesser role and helped manage the Apple Vision Pro division until he finally retired this year, or is retiring this year. That is an amazing, incredible, storied career, worthy of praise. And yet you read Gurman's report, and it's like, this man, Apple, he had to leave Apple because of the change in culture, and the Apple Vision Pro is a failure. And it's just like, how? Why? Why is this the story you chose to tell? Is it because it makes people angry? Is it because it makes them upset? I know I sound upset, but it's just, this is what we were talking about earlier. How you tell the story is everything. And what is the purpose? And I can guess the purpose of Gurman's reporting, and that's, he has this narrative that he's been telling since Johnny Ive left, that the culture of Apple is changing. And so every time someone leaves, it fits that narrative. And he has to make it fit that narrative of Apple's losing its soul somehow. And it's just not great. I don't like it.
I'm actually reminded of Steve Jobs. That's what I'm thinking of. I've mentioned this quite a lot for some reason in recent podcasts. His fireside chat, as it became known, would have been 97 or 98, when shortly after he'd come back, and I think he was now properly CEO and all this, and talking to developers, he said that he keeps reading news articles from people who've left Apple, and that the assumption is that Apple is doomed because of it. And he's saying, but I know these people. They didn't do anything. That's why they're out of the company and stuff like that. So, yeah, he talked about Apple taking its knocks on that. But he was very proud, he said, of the team before him, just letting that happen, taking it like, because we're adults, he said. We moved on. And I don't know why I found that one of the things that was quite impressive about that chat. It seemed very straight and honest. But okay, I got to say, did you say there were two Dans are leaving, or two Dons rather?
Dan.
They have two. They have two of them in Apple.
Right, there's more than one. Dan Roskes, I guess, is his name. This is one we haven't really heard much of. He's been there for 24 years. Head of procurement. He's kind of the guy, I guess, who stepped into Tim Cook's position after Cook took over, or something similar. I don't have much information on this guy, but he's been around for a while. He's stepping down from Apple, but yet again, it's just the story seems to be, oh no, look at my S3 stepping down. Oh no, it's just, man, let these guys retire. Dan Riccio, you're making me do it.
Sorry. Yes.
Dan Riccio is over 60. He's like 61, 62. What is he supposed to do? Work until he's dead? I just don't like. When is a good time to retire from a company that you've been at for 25 years?
Never.
Never. I don't mean to dig into this. It's just I want to emphasize, I guess, if you want to call this chapter anything, it's please have media literacy, people. It's so important in today's news world, and the motivations of the writer and the publication is so important. And if you, speaking of that, if you want to know the motivations of Apple Insider, it's honestly to share Apple news. I mean, I've been here for a while, and I've never found a secret cabal or anything. I think it's literally just.
We should invite you into the secret cabal by now. It's about time, right. I think. Talk to me after. We'll set you up. Okay.
I've earned my secret costume that I have to wear, and
there's some hazing we've got to go through first, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
I get my own turtleneck, black turtleneck that I get to wear.
That's exactly right. Okay.
No, it's we write about Apple News, and we're a publication that needs to make money to survive. So there's affiliate links and stuff like that. But we're very on the nose as a company. It's called Apple Insider. we share Apple and tech related news. There's not much going on there, but you look at these larger companies, and they're dealing with a lot more things, I guess you could say. They're a lot more motivations, and I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing. It's just good to know what you're doing, what you're reading. Anyway,
about a week ago, I was at a Royal Television Society event. I was working for the RTS for it, and I met this woman who seemed so impressed that I worked on the Apple Insider, specifically the podcast. And I thought, I've impressed somebody. This is good. Still got it. And she emailed later asking, I can't find this Apple Insider podcast. She thought it was an alcohol-related topic, and I felt a little chastened there. But now we know what the next spin-off should be for it. One of the Dons, whichever, used to do procurement, and the other one did Apple Vision Pro. So Apple's not going to procure anything anymore, and Vision Pro is dead, but that's fine. Except, I know you haven't seen them yet, but there is finally something new to watch from Apple on Apple Vision Pro, isn't there? Is it enough to change your mind and all's great again?
Well, there's some things to discuss on Apple Vision Pro we can get into, because yes, so Submerged, I also noticed Elevated has an episode out. That's kind of an aerial flyover of different regions. And there's also the 4-minute clip of the Super Bowl. My goodness. To
be fair, that's 4 minutes more than I'd ever manage of a sporting event, but okay.
The Super
Not
Bowl
a
is
reason
fun.
to buy.
Yeah, good halftime show.
I like the halftime, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
I think it's maddening that the entire halftime show was not recorded spatially, and if they don't do that this year, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing anymore. But Submerged is a 17-minute event. It's the longest piece of scripted content ever made for Apple Vision Pro. Excellent. I'm excited to watch it myself. I haven't had a chance. It literally dropped as we record last night, and I came in, put on my Vision Pro, and started recording in my pajamas. So kind of hard to have found the moment to watch it. But it's definitely one of those things I'm glad to see. Apple's slowly pushing out content. We've discussed this before, and I just want to make it clear. Expecting a brand new platform to be filled with content and media is a bit crazy to me. It just doesn't happen. I have said, and I still agree with myself. Hello, self. Thank you. I think that Apple should have evangelized better, had content ready to go. Everything that's there now should have been there in the first 2 months, I think. But here we are, October, 8 months in, and this is where we are. It feels like this amount of content, this amount of games, this amount of apps should have happened closer to 2 to 3 months in, through better evangelism and just spending more money on this product to make it an advertising, to make it a product that was just out there. But because it's slower, I don't think that's a failure. A lot of people are already calling Apple Vision Pro a failure. We don't know what Apple thinks of Apple Vision Pro. They're clearly still pushing for it because they've recently had these what people are calling mini WWDCs, where around the world they're having these in-person sessions, inviting developers to learn about Vision Pro and get help with building their apps and answer any questions that they have about it. So they're finally doing the thing I asked them to do 6 months ago of pushing developers towards Vision Pro. And I think there's a reason for this timeline, but I'll let you go ahead and comment.
Well, just that really, maybe we should postpone some of this until, I haven't got a headset, you have, until you've seen it. But I am especially interested this time because it's scripted drama, and I want, does it work as a story? I have a fear that because it's what it is, that it will be like when the fads we have every few years, every 10 years or whatever, for 3D films, where really, forget the story, it's can we have a whizzy shot for it? Mind you get that with most films anyway, but is it contrived to be full of gasp moments, or does it actually tell a story that's involved? Are you in the story, or are you thrown out by thinking that's an amazing shot for it? That's what I want to know. And I think amazing shot, brilliant for advertising, absolutely rubbish for creating a story and a craft. I think it has to get beyond the substance, beyond the style, and into the substance. But then it also has to use that style. I mean, when television started, it was radio with pictures, and then online media was really television online until they all find their own feet with things. And I presume it's going to take a while for spatial video to find its way, but I hope that it gets there. It'd be brilliant if this was there already. But 17 minutes is a curious length for it.
It works. You know what I think would be really good for Apple Vision Pro? A single or two camera sitcom. Because think about every time you've watched Big Bang Theory, pretty much just anything of that style, Everybody Loves Raymond, you're at a single focal point, basically a camera on a stage, because those are basically just large stages that they step into.
Yeah.
Friends, looking into a room. You don't ever look left or right, because if you do, you're going to see the stagecraft. That sound, your 180 degree of view in Apple Vision Pro is that stage. I feel like sitcoms where you can just watch what people are doing and look around the room makes total sense. Maybe you'll have to jump from the living room to the kitchen every now and then, but that is not jarring, and it doesn't happen very often, and the cameras just don't move. They're stationary. Excellent for this kind of product, and I wonder if, and relatively inexpensive to make. Sitcoms, there's a reason why a lot of them go for so long. It's because they're very cheap. A Modern Family or something like that. Like, I wonder if we could see something like that make it to Vision Pro and have an episodic that actually makes sense, is easy to film and easy to kick out on weekly basis. That's the kind of direction I expect this kind of thing to get to eventually.
I see your point, but I've got to disagree in loads of ways, because a Modern Family, although it appeared to be single camera locked off stuff, it wasn't. It was very highly produced, filmed, and extremely well done, and very
I have no
costly,
idea.
I imagine.
I've actually still never watched it.
Oh, you should. It's excellent. Yes. But the type of sitcom you're picturing then, it's usually a 4-camera shoot, and they do move more than you think, but it is extremely limited. The trouble is there's a concomitant problem with it, in that in order to be able to shoot with 4 cameras from wildly different angles, the lighting has to be done in a very particular way. In fact, it's got to be very bland lighting, very, very even. And as much as I love sitcoms, that style is not visually brilliant at all. So I think you'd be losing something. It has a chance. I mean, you've seen things before like Sports Night. Aaron Sorkin's thing tried to be a multi-camera filming studio audience thing, and it didn't. Well, the show worked very well, but it had to change for the technology.
It calls back to so in Grand Theft Auto, I believe 4. There's one of them out there. Where you could just go to a comedy club in the game and watch
really?
and watch a stand-up skit, and it would just be 5-6 minutes of Cat Williams doing jokes, and it was actually Cat Williams, and cool in the video game, and it was a ground to a halt. You're not shooting anyone, you're not stealing any cars, you're literally sitting with a stationary camera on the stage of this character delivering jokes in a video game format, and it kind of worked, and it was boring and silly, but it was funny too. You just getting to watch the stand up that way, right? Like, I can see Vision Pro having these moments of the Netflix stand up special. It's completely unnecessary to be in spatial, but why shouldn't it be? Why the next time a band performs live, why shouldn't it be filmed in spatial? Just do it. Apple has all this money. Just get out there and film one of the next big concerts. Get Taylor Swift or Linkin Park or Olivia Rodrigo and stick one of these cameras with a paid small audience to clap in the background and just allow you to watch them do their craft, right? There's ways that this kind of stuff can work. And I think volume would help a lot here, because right now we're dealing with the problem of there's only 6 different shows on Apple Vision Pro, and each of them are getting an episode every 3 months. It's very slow going. So just fix it with volume. Make 20 shows, each getting a new episode, at least one episode a week, every couple of weeks across the board. Yeah, you won't get to watch a new episode of Elevated every week, but at least you'll get something. And I think that's where Apple's going. I mentioned it earlier. There is a strategy here, and it's becoming more clear. People didn't want to call it a dev device, me neither, and I still don't think that's the case. But I think the launch and the rollout clearly suggests that the first 6 months of life of this device was for the developers and the enthusiasts. Get it out there, get it in people's hands, see what they do with it, make Vision OS 2 based on what you learn from that, launch it globally, and then start delivering content and games and things on a regular basis, so that by the 1-year anniversary, that's when the product truly debuts as a useful product that people can buy and know they'll get something out of.
So do you think, you mentioned the little mini diet worldwide developers conferences that are going on around. Do you think those will make that happen?
They're going to help. Just like anytime Apple talks to developers, it changes their minds. When you're sitting at home and wondering, what am I supposed to do with this thing? I can't even see it. Developing from a MacBook with just the virtual versions of Vision OS is all you can play with, and it's completely different from using it in 3 dimensions. It feels impossible. It feels like, why waste my time with this, especially since there's no one there to buy my app, right? The most popular apps on the App Store still make almost no money on Vision Pro. I understand these are all boundaries that have to be overcome, but Apple going to developers and giving them a chance to ask questions and try out the product with their apps, it's hugely important. And Apple should be doing this in many, many more places than the handful of cities that they do it now. I think ultimately Vision Pro, this version, it will be a very low volume product. It always will be. At $3,500, it was never meant to sell even at iPad level, just period. Mac Pro level at best. And that's fine. I think that's all they wanted. They just needed it out there. They needed developers to have access to something. And as we get to them evangelizing it more, promoting it more, getting more ads out there, it just being available in more countries, the price isn't going to change. Don't expect a price drop. Apple doesn't do that. $3,500 until it's gone. But I do think we're going to see not an uptick, but a steady sales numbers for these things month to month over the next year. And then they'll be ready to announce, here's the low priced model. If you're not a developer, if you just want to consume the content that we've been making for the last year, go buy this $2,000 version.
This episode is brought to you by Notion. You've heard of Notion. In fact, you've only heard great things about Notion. But if you haven't actually tried it yourself yet, let me explain that Notion is an app and a service that you write in. You save notes, you have documents, you organize your work. It's actually what used to be called an everything bucket. That was never really the best term, but it kind of did the job, told you what something was, until Notion came along and does more. And Everything Bucket, I suppose officially, is the kind of app that it's meant just for you. It's everything for you and what you are working on. Notion, instead, is an Everything Bucket for everyone. You can use it all by yourself. You can very well keep it all to yourself. But now you can also choose to work with your entire team in Notion. Each person you decide you want to work with gets the full Notion treatment, which means you're all writing documents, doing research, certainly making notes, and doubtlessly adding lists of tasks that you all need to get done. Fine. Put it all in Notion. Do it all in Notion. Every bit of it. From a note to the final document, do it all inside Notion. Everyone's Notion is different. You fit it to your needs. You use the features that help you and you ignore the rest. It all contributes, I think, to making Notion this deeply personal app and service which you can then also choose to share with colleagues. Don't take my word for any of this, though. Just go find out for yourself. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/AppleInsider. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/AppleInsider, to try the powerful, easy-to-use Notion and Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/AppleInsider, and thank you to Notion for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. I hear you. Apple Vision Pro, it's dead. Forget about it. It's gone. It's history. I mean, the guy left the company. So,
of course.
How about this for the real technology that we should be mentioning about? Listen, just because it's just you and me, really, I might be able to slip your way an M4 MacBook Pro from my many friends in and around various Russian e-commerce sites. Are you interested at all in that?
This story is so fun. People are freaking out, and I don't understand why. Okay. I don't know. I cannot say definitively here if they're real or not. They still feel very fake. Is the thing. I'm on the side of saying this is all fake, but it's just really well done fake. So it started off Facebook Marketplace, a Facebook.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So a group. We've never learned the name. It doesn't seem to be public, but a group of people were sharing that they had access to a warehouse, quote unquote, of MacBook Pros with M4 chips, and they were hawking them off. And a week later, M4 MacBook Pros with the same box that was shown in this Facebook discussion shows up in Russia. So it appears that a couple of commerce sites in Russia bought up this stock of M4 MacBook Pros, or at least alleged M4 MacBook Pros, and started handing them out. One of them was Big Geek. There's this other website, let's see, Avito, that seems to have bought this stock up and started selling them or giving them to different influencers. And these influencers are now, this is where I still think it's all fake, Now they're promoting that they have them, doing unboxings and all this stuff. And in their links in YouTube is links to these stores that gave them these laptops to get them to go there to buy products, right? So, and it's this viral sensation. All the YouTube channels that have a hold of these M4 MacBook Pros are multi-million subscribers, right? 11.4 million for one of them. Like, they're huge, and they're showing off these alleged. And if you understand like Russia at all, as far as how it goes, they're very prideful in a lot of things. And one of the things that they pride themselves in is being first or being ahead, especially of, silly capitalist America. And they like the fact that not only did they dupe their biggest company, but they got a hold of their hardware and they're showing it off ahead of Tim Cook. That's what all the videos talk about. It's like, haha, we're ahead of Tim Cook's announcement. We're beating Apple or whatever. And it's all fun, but I feel like this was just a really fun way to distance themselves and just say and push product that may or may not actually exist. I have been in Bahrain and seen some really convincing boxes of not Beats headphones, right, and not iPhones being sold in these electronic shops. It's everywhere, and this packaging and the way they've made it, and the MacBook itself being identical, because that's what MacBooks usually are. There's so many little red flags here. It feels fake. It might be real, and if it is real, we're calling it the biggest leak ever. And I agree with that, but I don't think it's significant at the same time.
So you don't think it's as earth-shaking as the poor Apple? I can't remember, man or woman who left an iPhone 4 behind in a bar once after a presumably drunken evening. You don't think it's on that kind of scale? Yeah.
The reason, so this one's quote unquote bigger in scale because the MacBook, the packaging, all of it leaked. Basically just the product that's going to arrive on your door leaked. That just never happened before. The iPhone that was left at a bar was technically a pre-release prototype, but it did reveal a product that did not exist in Apple's lineup with a new design, and it was unprecedented. This is not a prototype. So it's a lot of curiosities here. These MacBooks were, so to answer your question, I think the iPhone one was of more importance, and we learned more from that leak. So, but in scale, it was a smaller leak, I guess. So it's hard to compare the two because they're just completely different styles of leaks. But this one with the MacBooks are certainly volume-wise, especially if it's a warehouse we're talking about, big deal if this is all real.
The thing with it being a warehouse is that sounds like a shipment was intercepted. We know that Apple isn't doing any dealings with Russia, so it can't be a legitimate Apple warehouse within the country. It's just, if it's real, it's interesting. But
they're U.S. laptops. The serial number on the back doesn't exist in Apple's database, of course, yet, but it signifies that it is an American-destined, United States-destined MacBook. Also, the serial numbers we were able to uncover, because they did a very poor job of hiding the barcodes. You could not search them in any databases, which is kind of weird if they're already boxed, because they should show up as something. The thing is too, so there's a lot of little, I wouldn't even call them red flags. They're orange flags. They're signifying there might be something wrong here. Again, I cannot definitively say these are fake, but my personal feelings is that it's probably fake, because everything about this is well done, but also very easy to fool people. First of all, the MacBooks being shown are space black with 3 Thunderbolt ports. That configuration is only available today in the 14-inch. Well, this is a 14-inch laptop, so just, I know 16-inch one exists, but the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M3 Pro is the only way you can get that configuration. If you get an M3, or M3 Pro, M3 Max, whatever. But if you get an M3 chipset, you get 2 Thunderbolt ports, and it comes in space gray. So automatically, this being a quote-unquote M4, not M4 Pro, says that Apple is going to add a Thunderbolt port, introduce space black. Okay. Fine, they could do that. There's nothing saying they shouldn't or can't. Just, okay. Next step is on the box. The wallpaper is the same. This is not unprecedented. A lot of people pointed this out. I believe the M1 Max to M2 Max, especially since it was a press release, was the same box art on the outside of the box. But it also makes it much easier to fake because all you have to have is the box for the M3 Pro MacBook Pro again, and you just need the M3 MacBook Pro to show it off. The back of the box is the only real giveaway here because that is the hardest to fake. The software showing M4 inside of settings, whatever, you can just make that in Photoshop. So easy to fake. Insignificant. Geekbench scores insignificant. You can fake all that. The only thing that is impossible to really, because it's not a render, it's a physical object, is the back of the box. And this is what's going to tell us the most of if these leaks are real or not, is after Apple announces these and ships them, is what the box looks like. These stickers on the back are completely different from what Apple ships today. They put the M3 chip or M4 chip in the specs descriptors. So at the top, there's these little bubbles that say gigabytes and RAM. That's it. And then underneath it's 14-inch MacBook Pro with M3 Pro chip is what it normally says. And this one, it just says 14-inch MacBook Pro, and above it are bubbles for the M4 chip and what's inside of it. Completely changed.
Yeah. You're starting to make me regret ordering 7 of them. Okay. I don't actually see the point of any of this. I mean, yes, I was interested in the iPhone thing because we saw what was coming next. With the MacBooks, well, maybe it's just 'cause I'm not in the market. My M1 MacBook Pro is great, but there's no radical change to this. There's no sign of a new direction. It's not like we were on Intel and this is Apple Silicon. So I don't see why people would be buying these things.
I think this is... I don't think anyone is buying these things, first of all. There might be a few people in Russia grabbing them up because they, again, clout chasers and other YouTubers now. It's probably just purely an influencers market, which would be hilarious. It's just a bunch of influencers are buying these to say, look at me, I got the MacBook before Apple released it, which is totally a thing that would probably happen, and I can see it happening. And that's just how the world works today.
Well, it's what I'm doing 7 times over, frankly, yes. Okay, bargain, I thought, but yeah. For my YouTube channel, yes. One a week, every week.
I think they're selling them for $7,000. But
Okay.
the thing about this is it is so easy to fake. So easy in so many ways. And the people buying them would never know they were fake because you could just flash the software and make it tell the buyer the specs you want it to tell. You'll just never know unless you know how to take this thing apart and look inside of it and see the sticky note they put over the M3 chip to make it say M4 or whatever and wrote it on in Sharpie. I don't know. The only way, and someone has suggested this, why doesn't someone just buy one of these and crack it open? It could probably happen. Who knows? But no one in Russia is going to do that because, again, they're kind of this unified mindset of, we need to make Russia look good. So no one in Russia, unless they just hate Russia, is going to buy one of these, crack it open, and prove Russia wrong. It's just not good. That's just not how that place works. But
Russia's the only country that thinks that way about itself.
That's not
Britain
true at all.
Really doesn't. No. So, I tell you mentioned software, then flashing software. Let's move. We've talked quite a lot about hardware, and there is something I want to talk to you about with software, which is basically Apple Intelligence. Because remember, you're in the US, I'm in the UK. For me to use Apple Intelligence now, even through the betas, I have to go through a couple of hoops. I have to change the Siri language, I have to change all this. And it doesn't sound like much, but it's weirdly tedious. And then you find there's so many peculiar settings differences. Like I've just gone back onto the betas because I've got to write something about Apple Intelligence in a few weeks' time. So I need to, use it properly. I went back on, and again I thought, right, Americans use 12-hour clock instead of 24. I mean, I thought America invented 24-hour clock, but okay, so that's something to change. And you have this weird Fahrenheit thing you're all crazy for. I don't understand that, but okay. So there's just lots of odd settings, and I think my HomeKit setup is getting a bit confused. But having made the move back, I was on it, then I was off it, then I was on it, and I have got extremely exasperated with Siri because Siri got better, and then it got worse, and it seemed to get worse when I moved back to Apple Intelligence. As someone who presumably is on it consistently, are you actually seeing the promised Siri improvements?
Well, it's impossible to see the promised improvements because they don't exist yet. The only thing we've gotten with Siri so far is the ability to correct yourself mid-sentence, and I guess its language processing has changed. And I've always been a Siri unicorn, so I've not had much issue with getting my point across before. I just tell it what I want it to do, and it does it, or it provides the answer. I know people have problems with that.
Yes.
I haven't noticed any change there because I was always able to get it to do what I wanted anyway. We'll see. I mean, right now there's nothing. What is actually changing with Siri isn't coming until iOS 18.4 or so. So about March of next year. And that's with the intent system where you can look at the display, hold down the button and say, do this with that on this screen. And it will understand that because the app intent systems where apps, the on-screen app can say, this is what's on my screen, and give it to Siri and have it create a response with that. Like there's going to be a lot more interaction between the system, the apps, and Siri in the future. But right now, none of that is there. And that is not the part of Apple Intelligence that's launching with iOS 18.1.
So right now, basically, Siri is just messing with my head. That's what we're saying.
It's got a new rainbow color. That's cool. I like that.
I like the color around the edge. I find it slightly disturbing the way it goes with the image in between. Whatever's on kind of distorts slightly for a second. That is sometimes just quite unsettling. But I moved to iOS 18. I came off the betas. I went on to 18, the public release, and suddenly Siri on Apple Maps was going where I told, and Siri is notifying itself. There we go. Iris was going where I asked it to go on Apple Maps instead of totally random places. And I've gone back on the beta on the newest version, 18.1, and Siri Iris is back to directing me to people I've never heard of in countries I have vaguely read about, but are not actually my mother down the road where I'm trying to get to, and things like that. And also the absolutely killing, maddening things when I'm cooking and I asked Iris on my watch, set a timer for 9 minutes. It was doing it for a couple of weeks, and now it's back to, I'll do that for 2 hours, 23 minutes, 19 seconds. No connection, no syllable in the time it comes is anything like it. And I just mutter. Yeah, but basically, tough, William. You've got to still wait. So what will we get on end of October or whenever it is that, well, you in the States, what will you get with iOS 18.1?
It looks like it's going to be about October 28th. And 18.1 is very simple. So Apple did add, so it's got a three-pronged approach. And each of those prongs is writing tools, notifications, images, and then there's this like hidden fourth prong that's not coming till later, and that's the Siri stuff. But the three that did launch are those things. So we have cleanup in images that is there, and it works. It's quite useful. It's funny how it interacts with different layers of the photo. You have to pay attention to what layer you're selecting. You'll see what I mean when you try it. Then there's the memory tool in photos that you can tell it to create a memory using natural language, and it gathers up photos for you using this really lively UI.
Yeah.
I really like the video that plays like while it's putting the memory together. It's a lot of fun. And then it has a much more powerful search inside of it. I don't think that's, people are calling that an Apple Intelligence feature. I just think Apple upgraded that, but it might have some LLM backend there helping identify objects in photos and surfacing it better, but I'm not 100% about that. I've just heard people describing it that way, and sure, why not? And then you have writing tools. We've discussed that before. Text manipulation, conversion, proofreading. I've primarily been using the proofread function. Awesome. People are talking about artificial intelligence. I'm beating this dead horse. I'll say it again for those who maybe missed that. Everyone's talking about how Apple Intelligence is behind and nobody knows what it's supposed to do and everyone else is ahead. let me tell you, I have gotten no use out of any of these other AI, LLM, whatevers out there. I don't need to generate an essay that makes up facts about Ben Franklin or something. But what I do need is the ability to proofread text that I've written. And I've been paying Grammarly something of the sum of $140 a year to do that. And it's an ungodly amount of money for what is a mediocre job most of the time. I know you've found better times with it, but it's just gotten worse.
No, I don't like Grammarly. I always feel like grammar is my fault. I need to deal with it, not having the tool. But actually, sorry, I interrupted you there. But I love that you found the writing tools useful. Finding anything useful from this is brilliant. Are we getting the summarizing thing of things like mail? Because I was looking forward to that, and in the betas at the moment, I'm having some regrets.
Yeah. I won't say I replaced Grammarly with Proofread, and that's saving me money. So Apple Intelligence, has impacted my life in a way. Like it is saving me money. I no longer need the Grammarly service. Excellent. But so just. Again, like guys, these tools work. They're doing a pretty good job, and I've been checking them. It's doing a good job, much better than Grammarly, much faster too. I just click it, it's done. I glance at the changes it made, move on. Grammarly is just not that. If anyone uses it, it's just so much slower and tedious. Anyway, the summary feature, yes, that one is there. It's everywhere. So summaries isn't just for parts. It's in every part of the system. It's in mail, it's in notifications, it's in messages. It is everywhere a summary could possibly be made, except for, we've discovered during the hurricane season, emergency notifications are not summarized, which is probably for the best.
Right, that's good. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, but everything else is. So in mail, the mail app is not the redesigned mail app we were promised, not yet. I think that's going to be an 18.2 or later thing, where we get the new sorting systems.
Oh, yeah.
That's coming later. What we're talking about here is when you open the mail app and you're looking at the preview, it is no longer the first 3 lines. It is a text summary of the mail, which is so much more useful because the first 3 lines of most emails is, I hope I found you well in this time of tumult and change, and please click on this because we are starving, and if you don't, and then you click on it, and it's, if you don't have this podcast guest, we're all going to run out of money. The end. Anyway, it's because most of my emails seem to be people trying to I think it's a bot system they've set up. Anyway, yes, you can summarize emails. You open the email, so you have an email summary in the little preview box. You open the email, and you can click summarize at the top of the page, and it will summarize the new mail and every reply and everything in that conversation into a brief little description of everything you've talked about, which is useful if you've got a 20 email long thread and can't remember what you said.
Now, that's the bit I constantly forget, because my logic is if I've gone into the email, I'll just read it. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is that I loved the idea of the summary in the inbox, and I'm finding it quite frustrating at times. Like, for example, this morning, a woman I work with has pulled out of a project, and you read her email, and the summary is leaving for now, coming back later, and that is not true. That is a summary of her saying, I'm out, and someone else saying, oh, well, I hope you'll reconsider sometime, which, a very nice response. And there's a summary saying, well, she might be back next week, basically. I found that antagonizingly irritating as a summary. I feel personally let down. But
summaries are worse? Just like any AI, whatever, quote unquote AI, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. It's a useful tool in the moment, but never have it replace your own intuition. You're not going to look at that summary and say, oh, that's what that email is about. You're going to say, oh, the summarizer got it wrong. Let me go see what this is about. And honestly, I don't think that's that big a deal, and I think that's only going to get better later. Oh, if you need to open the email, open the email. It's that simple. You go and see what it's actually about. But in the cases where it does work, it is quite useful because it's like, oh, this is garbage, throw it out. Or I don't need to look at this, or I'm saving my time, or I can look at this later. Like those instances happen more often than the oopsies, but I do get some interesting ones. Like, so that's mail. Messages does similar. Group chats are funny, where if you have people just going off in a group chat and it tries to summarize that on the lock screen, it'll give you the briefest, baby picture shared, embarrassing moment, and person threatens to burn down house if photo isn't hidden away. Like it's great. And then you go and you see, just it's a good conversation. It's pretty funny how it can summarize that stuff. But then you look at Apple Wallet getting summarized notifications, and it almost always does it in the worst possible way. It'll say charges for electric company something around $1,400, and then you open it and it's electric company $100 and a payment I made for $1,400. Two separate things, but it smushed them together and it made it look like my electric bill was $1,400. And I see that happen sometimes, and it's just like, no, you missed it this time. But yes, it's interesting. So that notifications is the other one, and then finally, so photos, notifications, writing tools. So we've discussed all three, but I think 18.1 is going to be great. But again, people are going to be underwhelmed because it's not life changing. I don't think it's meant to be. And I'm still waiting on someone to tell me what the heck.
Yes,
Apple is.
Yes.
Yeah, Apple is behind in, right? Because I get it. This is it. This is the Apple Intelligence. This is the iPhone 16 Super Cycle. People are buying this to correct their grammar. What is it supposed to be doing? What are we expecting? What am I supposed to be excited about and being disappointed that Apple isn't doing? Why are you disappointed? What is everyone else doing with this AI stuff that Apple is not doing? That is my question. And I have yet to get an answer. And to be fair, I have had conversations, but they're usually cyclical and don't get anywhere. Yeah.
So the thing is, you are not just cyclical, you are cynical. That's the word I was looking for about Apple Intelligence. I admit today I am seething a bit because the summary and the actuality of that woman leaving affected whether or not I had to do anything about replacing her. So, if I hadn't happened to have already read the email on my iPhone and, last night when she was going, I would have, I had to do different things based on what the summary told me. So that annoyed me. Very unfair of me. We're going to get into Apple being bad apples in AppleInsider Plus, and I promise you that one's more serious, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm cynical about artificial intelligence, always have been, because it's a nonsense name we've applied to a technology that doesn't deserve it. I think all the hype behind it is just hot air, and I think what Apple has done here has taken a significant waste of everyone's time and made it into something useful, which is, to be fair, an incredible accomplishment considering, again, the technology is mostly not that useful in these kinds of applications. Great for research, great for big scientific labs, good for very specific niche things. Just there's certain ways AI, this so-called AI, can be used in great ways, but people are expecting it to be life-changing or to destroy the world or whatever it is. Just does not exist. That is not real. And so I'm cynical about that, but I'm actually very happy with how Apple has approached this, because they did not do what Google did and try and convince everyone that it's changing their lives.
The thing is, Wes, wait till you're in the secret Apple Insider cabal and then you'll know. Then you'll change their lives. Okay, so next week you're going to be an evangelist for Apple Intelligence, I'm sure.
Of course.
But before we close out, there's something I believe you are... I don't want to say you're more excited about this than I am, because I'm not excited at all, but I think other people are. There has been a massive update to the iCloud.com website. Brace us for what the big change is.
I wanted to mention this because it was just kind of funny to me, because I have iCloud turned off, the website. There's a toggle in settings where you can just disconnect your ability to go to iCloud.com. It has something to do with what data is available online or to Apple. So like it just takes away more of that data from Apple. I have the advanced data protection turned on. So this update does not apply to anyone who has these toggles, because that website is useless. So if you are not using advanced data protection, if you have iCloud turned on, you are able to go to iCloud.com and experience the new, amazing dark mode. And there's like little widgets you can put around the screen. I would say this is really useful for people who are using Windows computers and want access to Apple files and photos, and that's all fine. I think Apple should improve this experience, add Apple Music, add Apple TV, like make it into a real hub, a destination, and make it useful. I would even consider turning it on at that point. But what's funny is with advanced data protection turned on and you toggle back on your ability to go to iCloud.com, the website doesn't let you set widgets. You can't take advantage of a lot of these features. Like there's so many things that get turned off by advanced data protection, and then you have to seek permission every time you open a note or a photo or something. So just for people like me who have just went ahead and turned on all the security things and increased privacy, whatever, data control, this update is not for you because the website does not exist for you.
Do you know, you just put it back in my head, permissions are driving me spare at the moment on macOS Sequoia. Absolute nonsensicals. Not even the give it permission once a month thing. I have a shortcut failing persistently, randomly, but persistently with, you don't have permission to use this file. It's my file on my Mac, and it's my shortcut. Calm. So basically, iCloud has a dark mode. Okay, on that bombshell, I think we should end there by saying, presumably people can't reach you over iCloud. Where can people find you when they want to know the secret of the cabal?
Of course. I'm on Mastodon at Hilly Tech. I'm usually active there talking about some kind of tech nonsense. Or you can always email me. My email is at the top of every article I've written, same as William's.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm also
the best way for me as well. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm also randomly a guest on HomeKit Insider. I believe, so I was on last week, but I believe this week we have a guest, so I will not be there this week. But you can catch me there. It is a good listen, good way to learn about HomeKit. There's so much happening in the smart home space that I'm glad we do that podcast because it helps me keep up with it as well.
It is a good podcast, yes. This week, actually, I was a guest on the Omni show where, in a very rare chance, I enthused about OmniFocus. I mean, you never catch me doing that at every possible opportunity. There are some strangers on the street who've not heard me talk about that yet. But I was invited to talk about that one. But
that was a good show. And you also appeared on Mac Power Users, and that was an excellent show.
Oh, thank you. I like both of those series. I'm a regular listener to them both. Speaking of series, my own YouTube series, 58 Keys, is just knocking at the door of 10,000 subscribers. Nothing actually happens when you get to 10,000, but it's a nice number. Maybe you could just pull out a few more chairs for it. So you can find me on 58 Keys, but also just, as Wes said there, William at AppleInsider.com. And I absolutely love email. Had some really good ones this week that Wes and I have been talking about off camera, and they might become Apple Insider Plus ideas in the future. But for now, speaking of Apple Insider Plus, that's just moments away, and it might be a bit of a rant this time, just might. But obviously, as we said at the start, it'll be fair and unbiased, won't it?
Of course. No, we're definitely big-time Apple fanboys. I did want to dive into Apple Podcasts. We got another new review, just one this week, 5 stars from P. Marriott. I've grown to enjoy the podcast, Nerds and Geeks instead. Oh, no. I somehow swiped in the middle of reading that one. I've grown to enjoy the podcast. You're reading
about another podcast, a different show. No, I'll take it. That's fine.
Yeah, 5 stars. Wow. No, the two hosts are interesting and work well together. So thanks for that, P. Marriott. Always enjoy reading these reviews. Whatever the star level, I actually do enjoy reading these reviews. Please go to Apple Podcasts, keep leaving those reviews, and let us know what you think of our show.
Cool. In the meantime, though, thank you very much to our sponsor, Notion. And if you're an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, please stick around for calm, serene ranting in a moment. But otherwise, I'll speak to you next week.
Talk then.